Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Fix Show. And before I introduce today's guest, I want to tell you that this show is sponsored by the Digital School of Marketing. That is where you're going to go if you want to learn the survival skill of the future. So the Digital School of Marketing.co.za. Their courses are accredited locally and internationally. And for those of you interested, if you subscribe to our podcast this month and leave your details, or just hit the subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you are, we'll try and find you and reach out to you. From our side, you can stand a chance to win 11,500 Rands worth of digital marketing courses. Well, technically only one course worth 11,500 bucks. And we want to share that with you. So subscribe if you're interested. And from our side, we're going to jump into today's show. And we have Dave Lichtenstein, right?
Well done.
Oh, did I get it right?
Very good.
I was so sweating bullets. I'm notorious for mispronouncing people's names on the show.
No, you did very well. Well done.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for joining us, man. Today we want to talk about email marketing, B2B outreach, anything related to helping service businesses grow from an outreach perspective, but predominantly email, because that's what Superhuman Sales does. And you're one of the founders of Superhuman Sales, correct?
Correct.
Awesome, man. So from my side, I usually do a little bit of an intro, but I think nobody's going to do it better than yourself. So maybe just give us a bit of an origin story on how you got to this point in your life where you would be considered probably, a guy who's an expert at email outreach and Superhuman Sales that's been growing and quite nicely as well. Give us the background story.
Cool. I mean, it's interesting. If you asked me a few years ago about email and if it would be my channel of preference, I would probably feel a bit dirty and want to take a bath. But actually, nothing beats email. So anyway, let me take you back to where this all started. I had a successful business that I exited in 2012. I was acquired by a company called Cycom in the telecom space. And working in that business, the biggest challenge we had is the phone never rang with the right kind of lead at the end of the line. So we would get leads, and often we would run paid ads, and we would get a whole host of different kinds of leads coming in. We'd have to spend our time disqualifying the wrong guys from the right guys, and really we're only left with a handful of really quality leads. And didn't have a solution for that back then, and had to just kind of continue with following the normal channels, but decided that it was time to leave Cycom. I'd been working there for a long time after they acquired my business, but I got that entrepreneurial itch, and it was time to move on. So I decided to write a book on sales. I self-published a book called Selling in a Shit Economy, available on Amazon.
Oh, really?
And the whole idea there was actually to have this book and sell it. And as people became more and more familiar with me, I would then try and upsell them to kind of higher ticket items, very much the way that you guys run your funnel systems. And what stuck, though, was really the methodology that we built around that, and we pivoted and we started to generate leads for corporates using this methodology that we built. So the digital product stuff got shelved. The book is still available, and people take me seriously because I'm now an author. But in reality, it really paved the way for me to become a lead generation business using email as the primary channel.
I love that, man. And I think that's exactly what we did. So we were about 6 months old, and we had a meeting with a very respected, well-known company. And after telling them how long we've been in business, they didn't take us seriously, regardless of my 10 years experience and Gilbert, probably 8 years experience. And I said to him, I was like, you know what, this is never going to happen again. It's about changing people's perspective when you walk into a meeting. And that's one of the reasons why we published our book, Adjust. And we're working on a next book next year, which hopefully should publish next year. And I don't want to steal your title, but the title is supposed to be the recession-proof marketing strategy or the recession-proof sales strategy. But I love the title, Selling in a Shitty Economy. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that in terms of, and I'm assuming it's got to do with email marketing, correct?
It actually has nothing to do with email marketing.
Oh.
It has to do with how I kind of built my previous business using referral marketing to generate leads.
Okay.
And referrals are great. I mean, nothing beats a kind of hot referral from someone you know and someone you trust. But the difference with a referral versus, say, email prospecting or LinkedIn prospecting is that it's not predictable. You don't know when you're going to get the next big referral. So really, email marketing kind of just happened and continues to happen because you can't hide behind website stats or kind of these vanity metrics that don't make sense if you don't have the right person in the right organization responding to you to say, hey, I'm interested, let's chat, you don't have a lead, or you don't have an interested party. So, that's the big thing. It really, it's in front of you.
Yeah.
And people know if it's working or not.
100%. And you mentioned the trusted referral, and I think it's Mark Zuckerberg that said that the trusted referral is like the holy grail of advertising. But you also mentioned that there's a big con to that, and that is that you can't predictably scale it. And that's where email marketing comes in. And you mentioned vanity metrics, so I just want to show you my shirt. Sales are bigger than likes.
Exactly.
And as a social agency, we've actually had clients come to us like, we had 3,000 likes and no sales. And it's like, well, would you rather have 0 likes and 3,000 sales? And like, yeah, exactly. And that's what it comes down to. So from our side, Superhuman Sales, maybe give us a little bit of a context to the business and what you guys do, and then we're going to start talking about the core nature of the business.
Cool. So really, we have data on pretty much anyone and everyone anywhere in the world. When I say data, I'm talking about third-party data, and it's all public data. So this isn't a Cambridge Analytica funny, dodgy situation where I have people's ID numbers, their mother's birth dates, and all that kind of stuff. It's really about your role in the organization that you're part of and the makeup of that business. So what industry do they play in? Who the stakeholders, the size of the organization, very specific information that we can use to make our campaigns contextual and personalized. So we take this very good data we have, and actually we do cold email prospecting or LinkedIn prospecting. And what that is, it's a very simple conversational email that's actually written at a 4th or 5th grade level, because, we're bombarded by all this marketing stuff all the time, that you really want to reduce the friction. And writing at that level actually increases conversion rates by about 36%. So it's very colloquial. Companies often say to us, look, I don't write like this. People want to sound impressive, but actually you should talk to people the way that they speak. And that converts like crazy.
No, I can definitely vouch for that. It's all about speaking to people in their own language in a way that they understand. There's a book called, I don't want to digress too much, but there's a book from I think it's Don Miller, My Story Brand. And he's got a couple of chapters on how to speak to your target market. And they did a study on Trump's speeches and Hillary's speeches. And it turned out that Trump's speeches were suited for 11th, between 6th and 11th grade. And Hillary's speeches were usually postgraduate,
college,
college kind of educated level. And it just turns out speak to people in a way that they understand, and that's a great marketing lesson, because a lot of people try and be clever instead of trying to be clear.
100%. It's all about clarity.
100%.
Clarity is king.
No, I agree. So in terms of cold email prospecting that you've mentioned, I think when people say cold email marketing or email marketing, there's a big difference between traditional email marketing, the sense of the word, and then cold email prospecting. Maybe just clarify the difference between the two for us.
Yeah, so email marketing is typically your newsletter style HTML kind of emails. And in fact, those also convert like crazy. As a transactional medium, they say that email is 38% more effective than social and kind of other paid channels. But we don't do that. So we don't do the newsletter opt-in style kind of inbound approach. We really focus on outbound. So outbound it's like cold calling with email. So it's a very simple message that goes out to a prospect, and it looks like it's been written for the recipient. And we're just able to do that at scale. So a lot of the magic is writing these emails in a way that people look at them and say, hey, this person thought about my needs and requirements, and they weren't just spamming the SHIT out of me. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast. So.
We'll just bleep it out if it happens.
Cool.
Awesome. No, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to email marketing, people think about the take-a-lot emails they get on a daily basis. And to some, that's very annoying. So the moment you say cold email prospecting, they kind of put you in the same category, going, oh, no, I don't want to, send mass emails to people. And that's obviously something different. The people traditionally use a MailChimp software tool, and they start communicating with their own databases.
And it's big. People are sending bulk emails, where we really want to mimic how a normal person would send email on a day-to-day basis. So if you're a salesperson and you're prospecting, they say you should email between 30 and 80 people every single day. So that's not a lot of email at all. Where spam, you're talking millions potentially. So we never send more than 200 emails per day per person sending. So very much it looks and feels like
A real person.
a normal response would, a normal interaction. And we also would stagger that and randomize the send times. So it kind of really looks and feels like it's a normal person sending these emails.
And it's personalized, like you've mentioned before, like to the person, maybe in some way, shape, or form, by using his first name. And you almost make it sound like you're his friend, right?
Yeah, look, it goes deeper because we look at the company and we try and understand the company's makeup so we can really add a lot of that to the email itself. So it's not only personalized to him, it really talks to his context and his situation.
And it's almost, I think you've also mentioned like it's automated at the end of the day, like, or it's scalable in a way where you can do this at mass, even though, 200, like, no, I don't think anybody's sitting there sending 200 mails manually every single day. And maybe just put some clarity behind that this is something that, a business can obviously utilize a service like yourself, or someone can, choose to send 200 mails a day themselves, essentially.
Sure, so people can do it themselves for sure. I mean, the magic with us is that it's a very iterative process. We have a data science team that's analyzing all of these replies, because nothing beats real replies from real people, right? Because it's a real person. It's not anonymized. It's not some like fancy story that's happening in the background. These are real people saying, hey, I'm interested or I'm not. And by analyzing these replies, you can really get better over time. I mean, small percentage increases week on week swing the biggest doors over a long period. So really, that real person response makes a big difference.
I think a big question people might have is it Poppy compliant? Because the data that you're generating, everybody is now Poppies on a Poppy frenzy. So, is it legitimate? Like, what's the story there?
Sure. So, I mean, Poppy is an interesting one for us, and we are quite confident we'll be ready and that our processes are compliant. A good one to look at is GDPR. So, GDPR in the UK and European Union has real teeth and significant fines, and we've been aligned to GDPR for a very long time now. And a function of GDPR says that as long as there's legitimate interest, you're allowed to email a person. And legitimate interest means you've really taken the time to understand his situation. And there is interest for the email that's going out. So, for instance, the company that you're working with has had a lot of success dealing with CTOs in companies from 200 to 500 staff. They've got case studies, success stories, etc. So then you can really use that to find more clients that look and feel like that. And that would give you some sort of legitimacy. So Poppy is still early days, and it's a bit of a minefield at the moment. But by the time, things actually come into play next year, we'll be more than ready.
So now that the people listening, and it's mostly SMEs, and I think the database is growing quite nicely. We're sitting with close to about 9,000 people in our network.
Well done.
Shane, thank you so much. It's focused on just trying to add as much value as we can. It's a space that we're very passionate about. But the question mainly is, now that people know a little bit about the business and that you guys do email prospecting and it's reaching out to prospective clients at scale, maybe let's talk about more of a layman's terms, kind of like how this would actually work in reality. Because something in theory, it always sounds amazing. Oh, you're going to reach out to all these people, but on a practical level, how would it necessarily look? And before we really get down into that, I want to mention that this strategy, I did it obviously myself because I've had the passion for it and I've had the time for it, because there's a saying, one of my friends came onto the podcast and he said, you know what, if you don't have money, usually you have time. And if you don't have time, hopefully, you're doing something with your time so it justifies that you have enough money to pay someone to help you with that service. And when I started my first business, Fitness 101, it was more consumer focused. So there wasn't really room for anything like this specifically. We weren't necessarily selling anything to service businesses in the beginning. But then we started monetizing the platform. And that's where I started just randomly emailing companies and saying, hey, do you want to advertise on this platform? Here's what makes us attractive. And I did that purely just manually, one by one. Every day I tried to find someone's email address and I tried to get an advertiser on board. So I sent about 20, 30 mails a day. At that time, I thought it was massive. And with a bit of luck, the business started growing. And it was purely because of the strategy and also just in the increase in popularity of the platform that we had. But when I started VA Media, I obviously did a lot more research on cold email prospecting, cold prospecting on LinkedIn as well. So when I started the business, I had a specific strategy on how I'm going to get past just my own referral network. Because obviously, having left a company, I went to my low-hanging fruit and I said, hey, I've got some free time. Do you want me to help you with your marketing or anything? And 2 or 3 people said yes, and that's how I got my first couple of clients. But the question is, how do you predictably scale the business from there? And that's where cold email marketing, and I'm a big testimony kind of like for your industry and potentially even for Superhuman Sales as well, because you guys have had some amazing case studies which we can chat about as well. But that's how I managed to grow the business in a predictable fashion. It's all about sending potentially 100 mails a day, knowing that I'm getting 10 people to reply who's interested, and then one who wants to actually, confirm a meeting with me. And then if I have 10 meetings a week, one of them become a customer. It means I've got one new client every single.
Do you want a job?
So essentially, it's a numbers game, right? And I think
yes or no. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah. I mean, to an extent, it's a numbers game, but really, if your campaign isn't performing, it doesn't matter how many emails you send, you're not going to get the results. So
true.
Really, the magic is being able to send as few emails as possible for the highest result.
Yeah.
And the highest value prospect. I mean, that's what it's about. Because we can hyper target people very specifically. We can go after really high value ticket items, decision makers, CEOs, and the like. Whereas, kind of an inbound strategy, you get what you get. And this is the reverse. So you'll get much less leads, but the deal size should be much bigger. I mean, Salesforce did a study recently, and they said that the deals that they closed from outbound or email prospecting were 10 times larger, 3 to 10 times larger than inbound. And a lot of that has to do with being able to hyper target people and go after the people you want rather than just let people come to you.
Yeah. But being cognizant to, my understanding back then, I was like, hey, this is all a numbers game, right? So I was like, cool, I've gotten one client from sending 100 mails. So it's like every 100 mails I send, I could potentially get another client. Not knowing about improving my message or maybe the scrutinizing of the sourcing the emails on a different platform or a better way would obviously improve the quality of the people that I'm reaching out to. And that's technically what we did. And Gilbert, who joined me very early on, was a testament to that. Like, we actually had someone full-time just find emails, learn a little bit about their company, automate the process in terms of, I think we used a platform called Ninja Outreach, where you can literally just put the first name in there and that's kind of like how we grew. And I think that's why I wanted to chat to you about it today, because technically this is a great product offering. It's a great strategy for anybody in the service space. And I think, people are so fixated that you need a huge lump sum of marketing cash flow in order to grow a business. And that's not necessarily the reality. And I think specifically because we're in this current economic climate, it's important to make people aware of the fact that there are more affordable ways to grow your service business.
Sure, and you can do it yourself. You don't have to be paying agencies or,
100%.
Google's, Facebook's, etc. Really, you can do it yourself, and that's the great thing about it.
Exactly. And as an agency ourselves, what happens if someone comes through the door, we would honestly tell them, you don't need an agency, you don't need us. You don't need to pay us 15 grand a month. And actually, it was a classic example, and I hope Rowan doesn't mention that I'm mentioning his company, but I just want to ensure that people understand that it's a legitimate comment that I'm making. Rowan from a company called Savvy Analytics came to us, and he's like, I want to target small businesses because, we have this tailored and unique offering in terms of a CRM solution that they have, and it's quite unique and it's very interesting. And I said to him, I don't think you should be paying us, this kind of money, because we need X amount to really show value, and you're not in a position to really get that value for that investment. I think, here's what you need to do. And I referred him to a friend of mine who can offer a very similar service at a more affordable cost, because he just launched his own agency and he's got a lot of free time. So it's a classic example of the fact that agencies would never really, probably tell you that, because it's all about money coming into the doors. But also you as the business owner then trust that agency that they've got the best advice for you. And they go, hey,
exactly,
we need to take this money and we need to do X, Y, and Z with it. And then it doesn't work. And you think that's the alpha and omega. And you're like, oh, now my whole idea is never going to work, just because one agency didn't get it right or one person didn't get it right for me. And I think the reality is that there are a lot of ways to skin a cat. And in this case, there are more affordable ways, to go about growing your business, essentially.
Look, nothing beats a multi-channel approach, but really to use email that everyone has as a tool to at least start out, test, see what people respond with. I mean, especially with new products. If you've got a new product, how do you test that? If people aren't searching for it, if people aren't aware of it, you really have to do something like prospecting to, get in front of people and really test the idea.
My question is because we're reaching people on email, does it mean that this is predominantly, I'm assuming it's predominantly for service businesses, correct? What is your perspective on that? Do you think it's something for the consumer space as well?
So we don't do it from a consumer perspective. It doesn't work as well. Also, the data that we get is very much specific to the company itself and the people in the organization. So doing cold email with consumers does work, but not as well as it does for companies. So any kind of company that wants to target another company, kind of email or LinkedIn prospecting is a great route.
If you don't mind, I want to walk through a little exercise with you in terms of, let's pretend like I'm coming to you, for a specific service. I would love to just mimic the scenario and how it would work, just so to give people an exact idea of what this service actually entails and how you would approach it. So we're V8 Media. I'm now coming to Superhuman Sales, and I say, hey guys, you know what? We're looking for a more predictable way to scale our business. We heard about cold email prospecting, but we're not 100% sure on how it works. Can you clarify, and how do we proceed? I think, can we take it from there?
Sounds good. So the first step would be a workshop with us. So we are very strong from a content perspective, and taking your highest leverage or highest value offer and distilling that down into its simplest message, because people don't want to read long emails. They really want you to get to the point very quickly and to be very clear on what you're offering. So we would workshop that with you to understand, what is this offer, and start with one offer or one product, one solution, just something that you think is going to get you in front of the right people, because this is really about a toe into your ideal prospect, and once you meet with them, you can always upsell or cross-sell them to something else. So one is a good starting point. Often guys want to test multiple offers to see which one lands, but really it's about this 80-20. So what is the 20% offer that's going to give you the 80% results, which are leads and sales, really? So we workshop this with you. We would write all the copy. So typically an email campaign consists of 3 to 5 emails in the sequence. And how the sequence works is that it starts small, so it's a very short message, and as it goes, the message gets longer and longer. But what happens is the emails are automated, but if someone responds, whether negative or positive, that sequence pauses and your sales guys then take over that conversation. So as soon as someone replies, that sequence pauses. So our job is really the toe in there. And how it works, we integrate into your mail account, because because of the personalized nature of email, you want the email to come from a real person. So we hook in your email account, we hook in all the copy, and then we put in our database. So as part of the workshop process, we unpack who this ideal prospect is. So, what industries do they work in? What is the size of the organization? What are they typically called? I mean, is it a CEO, CFO, etc.? And then again, it's this marriage between very good conversational copy and very good data. And it's quite simple if you think about it. It's a series of emails, it's good data, and the magic is kind of in the subtleties of how we do things.
The first thing you mentioned was understanding your most attractive offer or your unique selling point. And it's very sad to say this, but a lot of people don't actually know what their USPs are. And I don't know what your perspective is on that, because that's the biggest hurdle we have as an agency. Companies come to us and say, like, I want to spend money on Google or Facebook. Let's go. And I'm like, hold on. Let's do a workshop similar to you guys. We started doing, Zoom work, kind of like a 2-hour workshop where we really just go granular into the actual business. And when it comes to the USP, which is usually first, people go, oh, we have great customer service. I'm like, well, hold on, that's not a USP.
Exactly, that's not a distinction. And that's a really great question. The thing is, you're actually not a good judge of that, because you don't know. You're too close to things. And typically the best judge or judges are your clients. And really, to research your customers and find out what they think about you will be very different to what you think. So often as part of our process, we'll do that. And the research really highlights so much about what you think your offer is, how you should position it, etc. And often it is so different to what you think.
I think it comes down to, if you have existing clients, ask them really what's the one thing that they love about your service,
and what do they hate?
100%. What do they hate? Because you can articulate that's something the decision maker who you're reaching out to doesn't have to worry about, because it's a pain point usually for someone. For example, if they say, we hate the fact that we hate the fact that you guys are always late for meetings. You're like, okay, we can improve our service on never being late for meetings again. And then in the email to the prospect who you're reaching out to, you're like, we have this great product, and best of all, we're never late for meetings anymore, because it's something obviously we've improved. And I think it gives you constructive feedback on how to grow the business, essentially. That's a bit digressing to a different topic. But
sure. But also, interestingly enough, people have too many offers. And really, it's about figuring out the one that's going to do all the damage and get you all the sales that you need. And often the challenge there is that takes time and testing. And, you can have all the theories and hypotheses in the world, but the only way to know is actually go out there and test and see what lands for people. And niching the niche is also very important. Like, you don't want to be all things to all people. You've got to figure out what product or service do you have that really speaks to this particular person or the specific industry or company size or whatever, and really double down and make it happen. And people will see you as the expert in that space. I think a challenge with a lot of marketing agencies, not that I want to bash any of them, is that they offer too much. They open up their coats and they do everything, but then what are they experts at? It's very hard to see. And for us, we know that sticking to our knitting, doing LinkedIn and email, using great data is all we're going to do.
It's funny you say that, because our story is very similar. We started off being naive and wanted to do everything. Copywriting, SEO, Google, Facebook, whatever, you name it. And today we have 2 core products. And that's 2.5 years later, where we've realized these 2 products, I think, is a perfect fit for the market. And we've become really, really good at those 2.
And how did you know it was a fit? Because you tested and you saw that this is what people want.
Yeah, that for sure, that. And also, I've also realized that there was a massive headache trying to offer all these services, because you need staff members and all kinds of experts in order to.
Sure.
So I've just realized that I will be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I think that's what it came down to. And I want to be a master of something, that's for sure.
Not just those big guns you've got.
That's the third comment about my guns. I don't know if I should. I'm getting self-conscious here. No, I'm joking. From my side, I wanted to touch on the fact that you mentioned sequences, which I want to just maybe clarify. Exactly what is a sequence, and is it automated? Is it a follow-up? You're sending the original mail to this decision maker, and then you mentioned sequence. I think I just want to put clarity on that.
Sure. So a sequence is a series of emails, really. So I send one email, a very short email, and if they respond, they don't get any other emails. But if they don't respond, I'll send them another follow-up, and then potentially a third, a fourth, and a fifth. And really what would dictate whether that sequence stops or that series of emails stops is if someone replies. And a lot of the magic is, being able to do as few emails as possible in the sequence to get a response, because you don't want to irritate people either. I mean, if someone hasn't responded by the third email, move on.
100%. And those follow-ups are all automated, I'm assuming, right?
Exactly, all automated. So we would write all of that content up front, and we have a methodology for doing that. But really, the first one would be shorter, because people aren't familiar with you. They're going to give you, really minimal time. I mean, they say with Facebook, if you chat to someone on Facebook, your videos or your content shouldn't be longer than 5 minutes, because people aren't on Facebook to buy anything. And you want to catch them with something really, really short and really punchy. And the same goes for any channel, right? So we start really small, and as we send more emails, they become a bit longer, and there's more context to the campaign.
And then you also mentioned copy, because you did mention that you guys plan this out all in advance. You write all the necessary copy. Like, how important is the copy really when it comes to these things?
Yeah, I mean, copy is everything. I mean, look, you need the copy and the data, but copy done well makes all the difference. And again, no jargon, no funny verbose language. Talk to people in simple English. In fact, agencies aren't very good at this often. They write this kind of convoluted, complicated stuff to sound cool, but often you don't really know what it means, and you have to speak in simple terms so people understand. And some of the best people are just the business owners to write these emails. You find that the simpler the better. So you don't need an expensive copywriter to do it. You can often just do it yourself. But the trick is short and sweet and to the point. No jargon.
And I mean, I always think back of like the guys of like Gary Halpert and is it Dan Kennedy? Is it Dan Kennedy? I think it's Dan Kennedy. David Ogilvy, who was a master at copywriting as well. And I think when people say copywriter, they think that you want to put something funky and clever and smart together. And today, the copywriters who actually do the complete opposite are the ones who get paid the most. Is resonating with people on an emotional level. It's all you need. It's just getting people's emotional response, not so much trying to sound clever, right?
Sure, and it's funny, some of our best performing campaigns have been one sentence or two sentences.
So let's break down the series of emails. So you said you'd send 3 or 4 different emails. Can you walk us through potentially how the first one would look like and, what would go into it?
Cool. So very much we want to talk about the pain that we're solving. We don't want to talk about our successes or anything to that effect. We've all seen that, done that. No one's interested in it. They want to know about what you can do for their business specifically and how you can address the pains. So in the initial email, we always want to have this distinct distilled value proposition. We actually call it a vorpal, and a vorpal is a mythical blade used to slay a Jabberwocky, and it's also used to slay your competitors.
Is that Star Wars? No, what's that? Alice in Wonderland. Oh, man. Okay, sorry.
So that's really what it's about. It's about this like one sentence that talks about value or USP. I mean, USP is quite a fancy word. I'm just talking about like a distilled value proposition. So that's typically how the first email looks. The second one will be longer because you want to give more context. The first email is potentially a few sentences, where the second email could be double that, and really you're kind of giving more context to the initial email, and just expanding on the initial thought process. And then the third email, we sometimes bring in testimonials or how similar organizations have got success. We don't want it to be generic. So generic is a killer. It has to really talk to the company specifically. So if there are testimonials or case studies, it must be about that prospect specifically or that company specifically. So that tends to work well. But again, short and sweet. And 3 is typically good. I wouldn't do anything more than 3 to start. I think that's the magic number for now if anyone wants to do this themselves.
And how often are you going to get cussed out?
Not as often as you think.
Oh, really?
I mean, there are people that get irate and aren't happy. And I guess the problem with that is dealing with rejection's hard. I mean, psychologically, it can be quite painful to get no's and not a lot of yeses. But unfortunately, that's part of the process. And as you go, you iterate and these things get better. But people are negative at times. It's a very small percentage of people. If you have an email that's really written for you specifically, the chance of getting like a really negative response is low. Because even if people aren't interested, they'll look at it and say, hey, like, this person's thought about me, and that's cool.
I want to touch on the fact that in the first mail you said, it's truly understanding the pain point of what you're solving, and that's why market research is so important. It's why understanding your own business, and I love personal development, and I like to meditate. I don't always do it as consistently as I want to, but what I felt meditation does is like it kind of like puts you in touch with your own soul, like it kind of like puts your thoughts in order and curates the day, and it's absolutely awesome since I've been doing it a bit more consistently, not as consistent as I want. And I think to use that analogy is that I believe a lot of business owners should just sit and meditate about their business. The business should just sit and like, who are you guys? Just like sit in that for a little bit and figure out really what is your...
And who you are is really the value that you have delivered to your customers. Chat to them, talk to them, figure out what is it that you've done for them that they love, and do more of that.
And then also just finding out exactly not just your customers, but what's really happening in the market, and keeping your finger on the pulse in terms of what your market is experiencing as well.
For sure. I mean, you're not going to do a cold prospecting campaign to the hospitality industry right now, right? I mean, that's not going to convert at all. So really, you have to have thought about who you're targeting.
In terms of the sequence, so we have something very similar for e-commerce. So one of the products that we offer is an e-commerce solution where we really help online companies scale their revenue. And what we've seen is that a lot of people would add a product to their cart, commence with the checkout process, leave the mail, and then just decide not to continue. And that's normal. Like a lot of people think that, there's something wrong with my site. And if the percentages are a little bit out of hand, of course, there's improvements and tweaks and optimizations you can make. But we've seen that traditionally 50, 60, 70% of people would, just abandon their carts. And what we've done is we have an automated sequence, a series of mails that go out. And for those, this is not for anybody who's interested in just email sequencing, but also more so just converting more paid customers on your store, is the first approach is always from an emotional perspective. So almost like an aspirational. So if I have to use an example for a sports nutrition company, whey protein is about $700 a tub. And so from an emotional perspective, we know that this is a heavy once-off cost, $700-800 that you have to obviously invest. So from an emotional side, we will talk about, the end goal of why you actually chose this whey protein in the first place, why you had a look at it. So it's either to lose weight, live healthier, or build muscle, recover. So
about the solution, right?
The solution, right. So it's about connecting people emotionally to that solution and really saying, beach season is upon us. Like,
sure, meditation's been good for you, huh?
Thank you.
Genre the Oracle.
So essentially, it's like just jumping on the bandwagon of saying, look, spring is here, beach season is around the corner. Imagine the last thing you want to do is take your shirt off, like you probably have done. I'm like one of those, and I'm putting myself in the customer's shoes. A lot of people feel like me. They've got a dad bod. You're sitting in this, like the last thing you want to do is keep your shirt on at the beach, like, right? You want to feel comfortable in your own skin. And that creates a bit of an emotional connection with whomever has now picked this product and added it to their cart. The second email is something more logical. So we'll say, look, $700, it's a once-off cost. We get that. But do you know that you get 100 servings out of this? Do you know that means that you're paying 700 Rand a serving? And technically, whey protein can be used as a meal replacement. Where on earth are you going to get a meal with this dense quality nutrition, vitamins, minerals, and everything else for $7?
I thought I was the salesman.
So, well, this
I want some whey protein.
This is a team.
Where can
effort.
I get some?
I can't take all the credit here, but I mean, essentially, that's what the team came up with, and I think essentially it just means that cool. You're speaking to someone emotionally. You're speaking to someone logically. Because a lot of people are logical decision makers, even though I think 80% of people make decisions based on emotion.
But they don't buy as soon as they realize they need or they want someone. So
that's when the logical mind kicks in. And depending on where you are in terms of your financial, climate, depending on where you are, how that wallet looks at the end of the month, that's when your logical brain kicks in, because then it becomes Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, do I really need this product right now, or should I rather care about paying my rent? And there's a lot that you can do, but there's certain times that you can't do anything about that. And then the second email, we usually focus more on trust and credibility, because now we've spoken to you on an emotional level, we've spoken to you on a logical level. Now we're going, listen, this product, it works. Here's John. John used it. He lost 3Ks in 3 weeks. Here's Sarah. Look how happy she is with her kids, and like a picture or something, essentially now you're building trust and credibility. And I think that's kind of like what you've touched on in these sequences, is like not just writing an email for the sake of writing it, but really talking to someone from all aspects, all marketing aspects, in a way where after 3 or 4 mails, they go, you've covered all the boxes that needs to be ticked to persuade someone into giving you a meeting or an opportunity. And there's a big difference between persuasion and manipulation, because a lot of people think it's the same thing. People say, oh, you manipulated me into... No. Persuasion, and it was a book I read, man. What book was this?
Influence.
No, it might have been Influence. It might have been Influence, but I read it recently. And Influence I read a while ago. I read this about 2 weeks ago. And the book specifically mentioned that difference between persuasion and manipulation. And he mentioned that persuasion is usually to a kind of like a better end result. So if you know that your company can add a awesome value and can really make a difference, then you try and persuade someone into buying that service or product.
And that's integrity, right?
And that's integrity.
That's how business is done.
If you know that your product or service, or if you know that this is not going to be the best outcome for the individual, then you're manipulating them at the end of the day, is when the outcome is obviously a negative.
And people actually buy on their own terms. No one's actually sold to. I think that's a bit of a fallacy that we have to get over. I mean, our job as salespeople and marketers is really to connect it together and give people the information they need to make an informed decision. And then again, people buy when they're ready, and trust takes time. And that's why nurturing and a couple of emails in a sequence really helps, because you are nurturing that person. You're giving them more and more information, and when they're ready, they take that next step.
So, okay, we've used the example of us coming to you. We've done a workshop. We've figured out that our value proposition is really helping e-commerce businesses scale. Where to from here? Is this where we start crafting the copy really, and that's where you start building the email sequences, and then we start looking at decision makers? I mean, let me know.
Yeah, so once we have the copy, then we start looking at this persona, or what the makeup is of this company or person, and we start building out this list. Essentially, the list is this person. So is it a CTO, with the size of the business, the industry they play in? and we put that into our system. But really, the magic happens over time. There aren't any silver bullets here, and really the best campaigns are the campaigns that have been running the longest, because you're having these real replies from real people that you can look at and say, hey, like, this was crap, let me change it. Or I'm getting a whole lot of these replies, let me tweak it a bit to create some more clarity. And nothing beats that, because it's a real reply. So a lot of that magic is the analysis, the ongoing analysis. So we know pretty quickly, we'll know within about 6 weeks whether a campaign is working. And if it's not working, we often just overhaul it completely based on these replies. And if it is working, the trick is to just make small tweaks and to always test, small tests. So A/B testing is a very familiar term, and really it's about testing the smallest element of these emails to see what works better.
Tell me something, how many mails do you guys really send before you determine that a campaign is either working or not?
So at about 400 prospects, you have a good idea about where things are. It depends on country. Some countries you need more, some you need less. But from about 400, you get a good idea.
Cool, man. So that's in terms of the email sending, and 400 mails sounds like a lot, but essentially you can get some awesome data from that and determine where to go from there. Like we said earlier, we have a e-commerce solution, and we want to potentially reach out to people who are either e-commerce managers or maybe digital marketing managers for e-commerce stores. How do we find those prospects, or how would you go about finding them?
Sure. So our database is quite clever. We can extract data quite specifically and in a granular way. So I can either search for people broadly by department. So I could look at everyone in marketing in a specific industry to see which titles and roles make sense. I can go after the specific roles, as they would call themselves on LinkedIn, for instance, and find more of those. There's ways and means. I can also search by seniority level, right? So say go after C-suite or go after management, directors, and that's a function of our database. We can really interrogate it quite specifically. And it's an iterative process again. So typically what we would do is provide a lay of the land. So you would say to me, we're looking for, companies that are 50 to 200 in retail, and who should we talk to? And we'll pull a list of kind of all the decision makers, everyone in marketing, everyone in sales, and we'll workshop that with you to see who we want more of and who we want less of. And we go from there.
And what's the end result technically? Is it meetings? What is the end result as a business for you guys in terms of what offering are you providing? What end result are you providing your customers or clients?
Sure. So we want the right person in the right organization expressing interest in having a meeting. If we're not getting meetings, we're not interested. Obviously there's a step before that. If someone asks for more information, we'll accept that. But ultimately it's about you meeting with this person, and then you can sell the solution that you're offering.
And basically after you've sat with this individual, or maybe this, I'm assuming you can just track it back to say, this decision makers came from this campaign. And if the business owner or the sales individual on the other end now, from the client side, could say, look, this is a bad quality lead or a great quality lead, you just do more and less, or what you've done.
Exactly. So the longer you do it, the better it goes. Again, 6 weeks is typically where we start understanding if it's working or not. But prospecting, for the first year is hard. I mean, B2B sales cycles are anything from 6 to 9 months. So you may not do deals for the first year, right? And people can get despondent. But at the end of the day, if they're having meetings with the right people all the time, and they're getting this validation of what they're doing, or they're not getting validation, they're having these meetings and people are saying, hey, this is crap, I'm not interested. At least they know. But you start seeing magic from probably the second year.
Okay.
So the first year is a lot of trial and error. Look, a lot of our clients have success quickly, but you have to manage expectations. It does take time, and again, the data is guiding the process. And yeah, this isn't assumptions. This is really looking at the data to say what is working, what is it, what do we need to change, how can we improve it.
So if you're saying that it really only starts working, I mean, you've had results. I'm pretty sure from an early, I would say, I'm assuming like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I'm assuming you've had.
Yeah, you should have pipeline within the first 3 months. You should have qualified pipeline. People that really are the right fit for your offer. It doesn't mean that they're going to do business with you now. There could be budget cycles to deal with. There could be other people involved in the decision-making process. Yeah, I mean,
So this
That's
would
the
be
sales
considered as
cycle.
almost like an always-on strategy. Is
Very
that something
much.
that I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, so this is kind of an always-on lead generation strategy to get you in front of the right people in the right organization.
So for anybody who's serious about their business, who knows that this is what they want to do, I believe in long-term strategies. Like, I'm not a quick buck kind of person. Like, the amount of clients who we've said no to and opportunities we've said no to where it's about the quick buck today, I just realized, like, it's all about the bigger picture. Obviously about enjoying the journey, but it's more so like, what are we doing today that's contributing to the growth in 5 years' time? That's kind of like how I look at everything. So the podcast itself is a great example. Like, we don't make money from it. It allows us to sit with people and really, get granular insights of the market, the industries, and all types of, I would say, marketing principles. But at the end of the day, it doesn't benefit us as a business that much. It benefits the 9,000 people who are sitting in our database, and it benefits them. And hopefully, in some way, shape, or form, it reciprocates. And I can see it starting to every time we send out a mail.
But things take time.
100%. But
There's
I think
no crystal ball here, right?
But
if we
for
had a
us-
crystal ball,
But for us, it's more of a passion project. And at the same time, I think, we're making a difference, which we're really, really enjoying. Those who followed me before Fitness One's time will tell you that it's all about sharing knowledge. And I was a personal trainer. And when a client signed on with me, I used to literally give them a crash course on nutrition, macronutrients, micronutrients, supplementation. So after 12 weeks of working with me, you could potentially just become your own personal trainer. And one of the personal trainers came to me one day and said, Yandre, like, we've seen the material that you're giving your clients. What's the reason why you're doing that? Like, you technically forcing your clients, not forcing, but you're technically giving them ammunition to go and do this themselves. Isn't that counterintuitive, counterproductive in terms of your, the financial growth? And I said to them, no, you know what? For every single client that I've actually had this, how can I say, introduction course with or educational course with, 90% of them stay on with me, even though they could potentially go and train themselves, because it's more about the relationship, but also knowing that every month there's something new that you're learning when you do train with me. And I think that's what happened there is I started understanding. Also, I don't enjoy small talk. Like, I want to talk about something I'm passionate about. So if you come to me as a trainer and you want me to train you, I'm going to talk about something I'm passionate about. I'm not here to talk about your wife or the kids' issues, and that's often what happened as a personal trainer. Personal trainers out there will tell you. You become someone's psychologist. So I'm ensured that I always have something to talk about. And that's why I came up with this 12-week course, because now I know every single time I have a client, I've got something to talk about while they sit for an hour or train for an hour.
Sure, but there's magic in that. The more you give away, the more you get, and there's some psychology to that. I mean, reciprocation's one of them. People feel that they have to reciprocate, almost subconsciously. It's not something that people are consciously aware of. But more than that, the more you give away, the more people tend to stick with you because they trust you.
Yeah.
And people can do things themselves, but they can never do it like you. And that magic takes years and years to really get right.
We were talking about consistency and always on, and I think essentially what I'm hearing you say is it's almost like compound interest, because
Love that.
oh man, it's Albert Einstein. Compound interest is the eighth world wonder. And what it comes down to, I think I did a video in the week for the social people who follow me on social media, but I basically said that it's very true in terms of finances. You're paying off your RA. So let's say, for example, you're 25 and you're like, hey, I'm going to start investing my RA. For the first year, you've got a lump sum saved up. In year 2, you start earning interest. In year 3, you're starting interest on the lump sum plus the interest. So that's obviously compound interest. But essentially, it's not just from a financial perspective. Like, that methodology applies to everything in life. It's all about what you're doing on the daily, on the weekly, on the monthly. And if you are, for example, SEO, it's a great example. Like, it's not something that we see a direct return on, but we started doing it on day one when we launched our business, and we're getting organic leads on a daily basis. But it's not because we started doing it yesterday. It's something we've done literally 2 years ago, and we're continuously doing the same thing.
It's about doing what you need to do every single day. There's a saying, it's called walking the 20 miles. And in fact, Ran Noyner was talking about that when he spoke about the Arctic trip, the first guys to the pole. And actually the guys that made it to the poles, all they did every single day was what they had to do, and they walked the 20 miles. And they had, they didn't have the tech, they didn't have the equipment, the crew, and it's about just grinding and doing what you have to do every single day. And it's hard, and certainly the starting point of anything is hard, but it just gets better.
Especially if you have to take money out of the business and know that it's not going to directly lead to more money for the business. And I think that's where a lot of people end up dying. And I've seen a lot of small businesses die because you get stuck between a rock and a hard place. Because what happens is that you're making just enough money, a little bit more than, you're just making a very slight slimmer of a profit. And you're so, I would say, almost desperate to just take that money for yourself because you've worked so hard and you want to spend it on yourself and you want to say, look, I deserve this. I want to buy the house or the car or the what. And essentially what you don't understand is that, now it's a matter of, if you don't have money, you've got time. If you don't have time, hopefully you've got money to continue doing what you should be doing, like we've discussed now, in order to grow the business. And I've seen so many business owners get into that, first year, second year. And I actually had a friend recently who reached out to me and he's sent me a photo of a Sirocco, and his business is about a year and a half old. And it's like, what's that payment? He goes, $5,000 a month. I said, you can technically hire someone part-time for that money. And then when he laughed, and then 2-3 days later he's like, thank you for that. He actually ended up investing that money. And I was like, why you are mobile, like it's lockdown, you don't have to go anywhere. It's such a silly investment. And I think people think about these investments differently, and I think every single time, ask the team here, every single time there's an investment for the business, I'm thinking about what it's going to be worth in 2 or 3 years time. And
we're so used to thinking that businesses just turn on. America's great at that. You see all these companies that have all this cash, and reality, a lot of those companies aren't profitable. And the biggest companies in the world have taken 20 years,
100%,
30 years. The biggest businesses, look at Jeff Bezos. His business didn't make money for the first 14, 15 years. So, we want this quick success, but that's not real.
Yeah.
And
well, the thing is, it makes revenue, but it doesn't make profit because every single cent is reinvested. And that's where the value starts building up and compounds. And I think Uber is a classic example. We don't want to digress too much, but Airbnb, these companies don't make profit, but yet they have market share because they've got data and customers, and they've got so many other things that contributes to the value of the business. So you see, 50 billion, or when Uber went onto the stock exchange, like everybody's like, they're worth 50. But the company's not making profit, and we get people come to us all the time. We've had 2 people who've tried to launch an Uber competitor, and they don't understand that. They're like, okay, if I spend this much amount of money, how much am I going to get back? And ideally, you want to make sure that you think about it like that. And this is now bringing it back to the always on strategy. Is like, a lot of times it doesn't work like that. Like, the reality is you can't put time. And also you can't put 10K in and get 20K out every single month. A lot of times you're going to have to put 10K in for 6 months in a row before you get the first 10K back in. But essentially it's about the bigger picture. And I think, touching on what you said, making people understand that it's not, even if you had to do it manually, it's not something you can go and do for a month and then hope for your business to grow.
You have to do it consistently, day in and day out, and consistency brings results.
I look at it as SEO as well. I also wanted to mention the sales cycles, and what we've realized is that often people are so desperate to shorten their sales cycles, but what they don't realize is if you get clients or companies who you do get the yes from quicker, usually those companies are not the ideal clients, because they're usually smaller companies who are a lot more, I would say, reactive and almost connected to the economy. So they're so dependent on the economy, and they're very in the short term, that they go, yes, we're ready to go, let's go. And your sales cycle for that specific client was 3 or 4 weeks, and then you realize, 6 months down the line they're not around anymore, just purely because of the fact that wasn't your ideal lead or ideal client.
Yeah, 6 to 9 months, that's typically what B2B sales cycles look like. So you can't short circuit that. And certainly if you want to go after your ideal client, you're going to have to work that. And decision-making processes have multiple stakeholders. So you've got to chat to everyone in that buying process.
So I think the last thing would be, if we had to start rounding things off, being cognizant that we have a lot of SMEs who probably want to look at doing this themselves. We're going to talk about maybe how they can go about doing that, and then essentially we can round off maybe with the services that you guys offer and maybe some of the costings, and you're welcome to share whatever you want there. But for those listening who are keen to start email prospecting, doing it themselves, any advice, any key tips?
Yeah, so there's a lot of tools out there, off-the-shelf tools that you can get. I can share some of them with you and you can post it at a later stage. But yeah, lots of kind of do-it-yourself stuff that you can use. And there's lots of various lead providers or list providers that you can get data from. and probably not as rich and as up to date as our stuff. I mean, that's been a lot of our magic, and that's taken years. But there's stuff that's readily available. Even doing a search for email prospecting tools will yield a whole lot of results. Not only the tools themselves, but the data associated to that. So I would go to Google, that's your best friend, and do as much research as you can. The other great approach that we haven't spoken about much is LinkedIn prospecting. And LinkedIn prospecting is very similar, where you have the sequence of LinkedIn messages, and the difference is that it's preceded with a connection request. So you send someone a connection request that talks to them specifically, and then that's followed by a few automated messages. And again, if someone responds, that sequence pauses. So there's tools like Octopus. Octopus is a really good one if guys want to start looking at LinkedIn prospecting.
And Meet Leonard, I think, is it still Meet Leonard? I think it's turned to something else. There was Meet Leonard. It's Meet. What is it now? I can't. Meet Alfred.
Meet Alfred.
It's changed to Meet Alfred, and essentially that would allow you to do exactly the same. It will allow you to implement the same methodology for email, just for LinkedIn. So it's a matter of targeting a specific decision maker in a specific country, and then sending them a series of inbox messages. Right.
That's it. Yeah.
And would you say that the context of the copy, the sequencing, would it be exactly the same as email, or is there a difference because it's a different psychological platform?
It's similar, though you are limited by the amount of characters you use. And again, the best LinkedIn campaigns have been the shortest. So get to the point as quickly as possible. Don't provide links or attachments or anything. Just try and get someone onto the phone. Just try and get someone interested in having a chat.
So don't pitch the sale, pitch the meeting, or pitch the connection.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. And Meet Octopus, Meet Alfred, and those tools come at a small cost. I think Meet Alfred is around $49 a month. I think they have a cheaper version now as well for those who are interested. And then in terms of email, so you said basically go to Google, maybe Google
reply.io is a goodie, so check that out. But really, if you Google LinkedIn prospecting or email prospecting, you'll get a ton of ads.
Yeah.
And do some research and test it yourself. See what works for you.
For those with service businesses out there, I think some tools that we've used to find emails, I think one is called D7 Lead Finder. The other one is called Lead Carrot, for anybody interested. Google those tools. It's a subscription monthly, and you'll be able to export, I would say, data, email data on your prospects. But the problem, what we've seen, and I think this is why people tend to move over to an agency or just experts in the space, is that the data that I get from those platforms are usually info at, support at, sales at, and those are not necessarily the kind of emails you want, right?
No, I mean, those are really catch-all addresses. You want to be talking to the decision maker specifically on their email, and that's not always available. That's a reality. So you've got to figure out a strategy of getting to the right person, and that may be from taking a bottom-up approach, so talking to maybe someone who isn't the decision maker but could be a recommender or an influencer in a formal process, and they could get you to that person. But we say, as much as you can, start at the top and work your way down if that information is available.
And then in terms of actually sending the mail, so we've talked about writing the copy, we've talked about planning out your sequences, we've talked about Googling email tools. What kind of tools do people use to send the actual mails? Is there any tools that you guys would suggest?
Yeah, so a lot of these tools are combined. So they have the data component and the email sending. So just a simple Google search would produce a lot of those. There's a lot of do-it-yourself that combines kind of this email sending capability with the data itself. And really, it's all templatized and quite easy to use.
Awesome, man. And in terms of your services, I think when it comes to the Superhuman Sales, maybe just give us a picture of your ideal client, people that you enjoy working with, industries that I think you guys specialize in, if anybody is listening.
Cool. So, I mean, we're very strong in the tech space. So a lot of like software development, analytical kind of businesses. We love tech because that's our background. So it's very easy to be passionate about someone else's business when we're passionate about tech as a whole. So tech's really good. I mean, we work with most B2B industries. We do a lot in the UK. So we export a lot of services from South Africa to the UK. And we're the biggest exporter that we know of SA services into the UK. So a lot of stuff in the UK and Europe. we like kind of the mid-sized SME businesses. So typically guys that have one or two salespeople are guys we work with. We don't like businesses that are too big because there's often, corporate bureaucracy. We have to get our tech to work with their systems, and that's quite hard. So, in terms of a size company, typically 11 to 200 people. And a couple of salespeople. We do work with companies that are startups and that are looking to launch a new product or service, but then they have to know that this takes time. Again, there's no crystal ball here to look at to say, hey, this is going to work. The only thing to do is to test to see what happens. So, the startups we work with have to be in it for the long haul. They need to commit to at least 6 to 12 months with us to get some results.
Tell me something, and in terms of the cost investment, you don't have to give exact pricing, but ballpark figures of what someone should be putting away for an initiative for like 6 to 12 months roughly?
Yeah, so we start at 12,750 Rand per month on kind of a 6 to 12 month commitment. That will give you 500 contacted prospects. And then if you want to contact more prospects, it scales from there. So, our smallest package is 12,750 per month.
And then that's 500 people a month?
A month, exactly.
Okay. And what is the average conversion rate in terms of meetings? Do you have any figures?
Yeah, so we see anything depending on the industry from about 3% to as high as 20% warm reply rate. And a warm reply is the right person in the right organization expressing interest in having a conversation. Those are really the only metrics we care about. Things like open rates, click-through rates, those are metrics that help us kind of tweak the campaigns, but ultimately, if you don't have a reply from your ideal prospect, the campaign isn't working. And again, it actually doesn't matter. If you get one lead from the right company, that could change your business completely. So it really is about getting less leads, but really high quality leads. So some of our best clients are guys that have really high ticket products, stuff that costs money, anything from 50,000 Rand and up, we find works well. But yeah, the bigger the better. If you do one deal for millions,
yeah, 100%.
You only need the one deal, right?
And you can fund it for the next 5 years.
Exactly.
So what I'm hearing you say is a 3 to 5% conversion rate to meetings at 500 prospects. Is that, 10 to 15 leads a month roughly?
For sure.
Okay.
Those aren't all going to turn to meetings. Someone could be interested now, but they'd only want to meet at a later stage. So again, if you can get 15 warm replies and you can get 8 to 10 meetings, and you can convert a couple of those meetings to deals, you off to the races.
Well, to put things in context, that's, close to less than 1,000 Rand a lead. And if you had to go and do that on Google, depending on what industry you're in, you're probably going to look at the same price. So it depends, again, who's managing your Google campaigns and who's managing your email campaigns, right, at the end of the day. So, look, Dave, it's been such a pleasure to have you in studio. I think you've added an immense amount of value. Thank you so much for that. I loved chatting about the topic. It's a topic I'm very passionate about. If anybody wanted to get hold of you, the team, where do we go? What do we do?
So our website's probably the easiest, superhumansales.com. It's pretty straightforward, and you could just fill out a form submission, or you can hit me up at dave@superhumansales.com. Awesome,
dude. Thanks again for coming
you.
through. For anybody who did listen to that, for my mom and dad who's paid close attention to this podcast, probably the only two people.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks for the support. For anybody who's interested, you're welcome to ask questions. Anytime to me or Dave. You've got my details usually because you're getting the mails from me. But from my side, thanks again for coming through, and we'd look forward to having you on the podcast maybe sometime again soon.
Look forward to it.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
All the best. Cheers, guys. Have a good week.